Hello, I'm Francesca Boyd and I'm honoured to welcome you to AIPH's Green City Briefing series. We have a wonderful webinar ahead of us and also our final from this series, which is very exciting. As always, we welcome audience participants to continue the conversation afterwards on AIPH's Green City Forum. This is also where you'll find a wealth of resources and recordings from the previous webinars that have occurred in this series, and where you'll find the recording of today's session. With an audience joining us from many countries and industries, I'm certain we have a range of expertise. Finally, may I thank our sponsors, Expo 2023 Doha Qatar and the Worshipful Company of Gardeners for their continued support of the series. Now to the briefing. May I introduce today's MC. Tim Briercliffe is the Secretary of the International Association for Horticultural Producers, a position he has held since 2013. Tim spearheads AIPH's many initiatives, including Green City, Expos, and the Intelligence Centre. Tim has extensive experience in the horticultural industry, having previously worked as a Director of Business Development at the Horticultural Trades Association in the UK. He also has a horticultural degree from Reading University and has worked in nurseries in the UK and in Canada. I'm really looking forward to hearing from our presenters today, and I hand over to you, Tim. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the introduction, and it really is my pleasure to be able to chair this session of the Green City briefings today. As we've been told, this is the last of this round of briefings, but I hope you have enjoyed the series that has been put together. I certainly have, and I feel that the contents that we've been able to bring are really addressing the issues of our time in relation to the needs of cities and how greening and landscape and horticulture can meet those needs. As AIPH, I firmly believe that this is going to be our priority long into the future, because the need for us to green cities is so strong as we face the challenges that the cities face, whether it is with climate or whatever different angle. Plants and landscape are able to provide some of the answers for this, and we see it as our role to help bring those answers and to bring together the experts that exist, the knowledge that is out there, to be able to help us to bring the best knowledge of the world to this topic, to be able to present the solutions to cities globally. And we really want to thank you for joining us on these briefings and for your participation and your questions, which really help bring them to life. I'd like to thank my team, Audrey, Tim, Francesca Boyd, Timothy Blatch, who have been so busy creating the content for these, as well as those in the events team who have been running it so efficiently. So as I look back, I want to thank them. Also, I want to look forward, and I would hope that this is not the end. This is just another stage, and next time I hope we can be able to bring you new briefings as well in the future. So today we're thinking about how we can reach people in a way that helps them to recognize the real benefits of plants in improving their lives and improving the cities in which they live. How we communicate the messages that we have. And the two speakers that we have today are going to do this, I know, from different perspectives, but they're tackling that same issue. And I've been very grateful for the sponsorship that we've received from our two sponsors, the Worshipful Company of Gardeners and also Expo 2023 Doha Qatar. And Doha is also something of a theme that you will see coming through this briefing today. This Expo that takes place was approved by AIPH back in 2017. It really is a significant A1 World Horticultural Exhibition that also has the recognition of the BIE. It's operating like on a level of a World Expo with but on a horticultural context. There are over 70 countries from around the world participating in this expo. It's running now. It opened at the beginning of October. It will close on the 28th of March. So you have time now to go there. Entrance is free. And you can see these over 70 countries showing what they are doing to address the theme of the expo, which is a greener desert, better environment. And the real challenge that desert and Middle East countries face in greening their cities, it really is a concentrated form of what every city is experiencing. A change of climate, which means an adaptation and a need to do things differently. So it's not only relevant for the desert environment, it's relevant for any city that's facing the challenges of climate change. And I would strongly recommend that you go and visit, because many countries have put together such exceptional displays, exhibits, and gardens to show what can be done to meet this challenge of the future. They're expecting 3 million visitors to come over the duration of this expo, and already many are arriving. At this expo, AIPH has its own pavilion and garden there too. This is something that's going to come up as we go through further into this briefing. So for me, it is a privilege to be able to host today's briefing, and we really feel that this is our role in helping to bring you all together on these great topics. But that's enough from me. I'm going to get going and introduce our first speaker. And our first speaker today is Dr. Mingyu Jiang. Mingyu, he completed his landscape architecture Masters at the University of Sheffield in the UK before pursuing a PhD in the same place. Mingyu's research explores how different plants coexist in challenging environments, such as those found in urban landscapes. And he considers how urban green space features, such as wild or naturalistic meadows, develop over the long term to maintain a mix in species for biodiversity and species richness. Mingyu is currently a teaching associate in agriculture, horticulture and engineering sciences at SRUC, Scotland's Rural College, which is a university with sustainable natural economy at its heart. Well, I'm really pleased to welcome you, Mingyu, and I'll really look forward to your presentation, and I pass over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Mingyu Jiang, and today my topic is about urban meadows. So I just named my presentation title as Designing Meadows in Urban Landscapes. And the question I'm especially interested in from my perspective is that is it possible to determine what happens in the longer term through design? So basically, I'm always curious, and I'm always interested in the situation that if you specify on the desktop, on our desktop, if you specify anything on your plan and get them installed on site, and would the reality, would the plant community you specified really reflect what you specified in your design stage? And yeah, as well as after a couple of years' time. So it's just a bit more about myself. And I trained as a landscape architect, and I'm not a horticulturalist. And so to me, I feel in urban landscapes and in lots of landscape design projects, the power of planting design is very often underestimated for the benefits of urban ecology and environment, as well as human well-being in urban settings. So I just come to this point because I just see lots of projects, they would always like to specify like millions of pounds on the hard landscape, on the pavement, on street furnitures. But when you try to negotiate, when you try to negotiate with your client to maybe spend a couple of £1,000 on a nice planting scheme, they wouldn't really realize the benefit of it. Comparing with the huge cost of hard landscapes. And the landscape architect, I'm especially interested in the tools available for designing planned communities. And so like what approaches we can specify from our paper, from the design stage to affect the longer planned community development. And so traditionally, to add a color palette into urban green space is to specify this sort of Victorian annual bedding system. So it's conventionally working okay with the public to communicate the aesthetics aspect, but the drawback for this sort of planting scheme is the that's lack of seasonal interest, and that requires huge resource on the management cost, and it's typically got shorter seasonal interest. So when your design population, when your designed annual bedding species go dormant, and after the flowering period, it simply just lose the interest as the as a green space, and it's very low in biodiversity value for urban landscape as well. So at the moment, the fashion or the trend to specify a planned community in urban landscape is to specify this sort of wildflower meadow. And so I'm really interested in that because you can apply that in different scales, and like from very small garden project to like some larger scale, like urban ecological restoration and a project, and that really enhances the seasonal dynamic as well, and it's got huge potential to provide high quality habitat for wildlife. And if you design that in sensible way to get the maximum coexistence within the community, you can potentially get a very high resilience to cope with the extreme weathers. That's especially important under climate change. So this is a very popular meadow in the UK, in Western Europe, and in many parts of the world today. So, however, it is very challenging to get this sort of high-level coexistence, to get this sort of extremely flowery community, especially keep the performance in the longer term. So that one of the core problems been discovered from both practice and ecological study is a problem of grass dominance. So just to put that in simple terms, that's mainly about the game of competition between forbs versus grasses. And so forbs is forb is a term referring to flowering herbaceous other than grasses. So we can just take that simply as wildflowers. So this has become a serious problem in the post-industrial world in both urban and rural environments. And this especially becomes very serious under the condition of very fertile soil. So that's that's very common, the heritage left over like from the agricultural land use history, and where has been heavily fertilized. So we can just to conceptualize this idea a bit more. So this is some sort of community. We always like to specify where you have colorful meadow, lots of flowering species, and you can relatively easy to achieve this sort of image, this sort of appearance in the first 1 or 2 years. But after a few years, right, those pictures are just very indicative. It's not exactly taken from the same places, but it just gives you the impression. So after a couple of years, you have the grass species outcompete those fob species, and the appearance would be just like green, looks like rough grass. So this sort of reality frustrates the confidence for designer and landscape managers. So this is a very real story when you try to communicate with them to specify those sort of wildflower meadows. You very often tend to be rejected as people think that's impossible to maintain in the longer term. So that leads to my research focus for my PhD project, with that can we just design a flower-rich meadow to coexist with the base layer of grass in the longer term. So we have actually got intensive research on this topic, and the most of the research was carried out from the perspective of ecological study. And when you look into those results, you can't really apply those results into your landscape practice, as between the two types of research, you tend to have different focus, different aim, and carried out in different locations, and you deal with different site conditions, and also you could have different species available to you. So for example, for ecological studies, the more focus on native species, but for the landscape design purpose, we could employ both native and exotic species. So that led me to the question that to what extent we can use those ecological studies on grass competition into our design model. And yeah, from these slides, I'm going to get onto some details of my research project. And so I designed my research project to test the result or some ecological approach to restore or to build this sort of flower-rich wildflower meadow. So I chose 30 perennial species and established them by zone. And within the 30 species, I had 1 grass and 29 fob species. And I designed the following treatment. I designed the sowing density, and I designed ratios between fobs and grasses. And I also designed 2 grass heights and 2 depths of sand substrate, just mainly to have the contrast of the water availability in the topsoil, or let's say in the substrate for the plants to access. So all this treatment made 96 plots, and that's just like impression what this sort of research looked like. I had 1 meter by 1 meter plots, and randomized them into the same location. So wouldn't really expect the community to reach the peak performance, to reach the peak biomass in the first year. And the picture at the top corner, that's the picture I taken from July, the second year of the growth. So let's get on to the finding. So the first question I answered was that does grass biomass always outcompete FOBs in the longer term? And I found the answer was no. FOB dominance could be achieved and persist with the base layer of grass biomass through design. So that's really from the benefit of my design model. So I employed low fertile substrate, which was sand, and moisture stress tolerant FOBs. So relatively drier FOBs plus moisture stress sensitive grass. And so the grass which tend to adopt better to the water moisture, like a bit more moisturized condition. So that gave me limited grass competition in the early stage, which benefited the growth of FOBs. And however, I still got two dominant FOBs, dominated more than 90% of the biomass, which were Achillea millefolium and Echinops spherocephalus. If we look into the competition mechanism for those two FOBs, we could tell they really employed the similar competition mechanism as grass competition does. So we can conclude that the choice of species were more important than the life form of FOB or grass. So the FOB or grass, that's not the ultimate answer. And that's still about the difference between species, not only about, it's just to conclude whether that's FOB or grass. And the second question I answered was that can design approaches determine the plant community appearance in the longer term? So if the design approach is really effective on the pattern of your community. And I found that the treatment was more effective on FOB seedling numbers, on the individual numbers, than the FOB biomass. So that really affected the number of survival we have across the year, rather than how big they are and how well they can grow. And I found the dominant species could override the designed pattern for biomass in a few years' time. So that's the aspect we can visually perceive. However, it's not it's not meaningless to have more survivals, but similar biomass, because more seedlings mean we can have more opportunities. And the third question answered was that which FOB species tend to better coexist with dominant, and I found species that have enhanced ability to let competition tend to compete better. So this ability can be enhanced by the architectural form, so as suggested by the illustration at the bottom corner. So where the species had basal rosette leaves tend to have less advantage to compete for light than the species which had upright growth form or elongated foliage or leafy stem. And that also benefit we could get from the growth form. I mean, if they could have quicker recovery, early emergence, etc. And I also found species distributed in wider geographical origin appeared more competitive in coexisting with grasses, as well as dominant FOBs. So that leads to the conclusion to my presentation. So this really comes to the question that how we can how we can retain, how we can just persist this sort of high level coexistence between wildflowers through both design and management. So I just sum up 3 take-home messages. So for species selection, I would suggest to have a similar level of competitiveness in plant community to get them symmetric growth. So we tend to have coexistence from symmetric competition. And what is the most effective design tool? I found that is to identify the dominant and drop them to very low density. It's probably not very possible to identify the dominant, depends on because you have different levels of set conditions that could become very complicated. So that's the stage you need to step in the management stage, and you got to identify them as soon as the community started, as soon as the competition started. And that comes to the bigger question that what can we do for planting design? So what's the attitude we should have for planting design? So I would argue that design can create a solid base, and as per se in my design. So if you change the design approach, that gives you like significant difference between the seedlings, and those seedlings, those number of survivals create a solid base. But longer term appearance needs management. That's about how you bring them up, how you enhance the biomass, how you enhance the coexistence. So, and finally, I would argue for the attitude for planting design. I would argue that a planting design scheme should not be seen as a product that is losing its value over time, but provide more values in the longer term with visionary management. So I would argue rather than design the starting point, we should see planting design is a design about designing the whole process. And that's just a brief introduction to my research and my findings. And so this paper is derived from one of my design treatment, and that would give you a clear picture and more details for the experiment I just introduced. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Really interesting, and I'm already thinking some things to ask you about this, and I have a feeling the audience will as well. So please, if you have questions for Mingyu, please put them on the Q&A, and we will deal with them after the next presentation. But Mingyu, thank you very much for that presentation, and we'll see you back in a few minutes for the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Great. So now it gives me pleasure to welcome our second speaker. Our second speaker is Mr. Sam Lemheney. And Sam has been involved in the past in delivering the Philadelphia Flower Show in the US for many years. And he understands how to engage audiences using plants and flowers to be the stars of the show. In this session, Sam is going to present his experiences of plant selection and display for something very recent, creating our own AIPH Pavilion and Garden at Expo 2023 Doha, Qatar. Sam worked very hard on this project for us, and we're very grateful, and it's good that he can share his experience on that and the lessons learned from this with you all today. Sam believes that the visual display can be supported by powerful messaging to inform and inspire people to appreciate plants and flowers. It's much about how the message is presented that is important, using appealing language and imagery. And of course, issues like drought tolerance in plant selection are really important when it comes to creating a pavilion in the desert environment. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing Sam's presentation, which he will share with us now. So over to you, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Let me share my screen. There we go. Just a little quick, Tim definitely described my little bit of my background. I'll give you a little bit more detail on my background. I grew up in the horticulture industry. My grandfather had a landscape nursery, so my cousins and I grew up on the nursery, running around and planting flowers and pulling lots of weeds when I was younger. Went to the University of Delaware, studied plant science and ornamental horticulture, and after I graduated there, went to Florida and worked in Orlando at a little place called Walt Disney World. So I learned a lot at Disney on how to tell stories with plants, working all over the property there at Disney. But the last part of my career, I was the producer and manager of the Epcot International Flower and Garden Festival. I was there until 2003. And in 2003, I was hired by the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, where I was in charge of all of their events, including the Philadelphia Flower Show, until just recently, last year, when I started my own business of creating event experiences, event design, and creating experiences for folks to enjoy on my own and help share my knowledge with folks. This is where I come in working with AIPH. Reached out to Tim, and Tim asked if I would be involved with working with the helping to design and create the content and the visitor journey for the AIPH Pavilion at Doha, at the Expo at Doha. So this is where we'll start, and I will really focus in on how we chose the plants and why we chose the plants and why we chose the messages that we did in creating the journey and creating the visitor experience within the pavilion. This is a couple of rendering shots that was designed by DAR is the architectural firm that designed the pavilion. Our job and our goal was to create the experience as they entered and walk through the pavilion, and using plants and messaging to do that. These are some great images that we saw ahead of time. Again, really trying to focus on how do we tell the story, and what our goals were for that. So this was definitely a team effort. Worked with Audrey Tim, who's on the call today, as well as Elena Tarakova, as well as Van Tran and Rachel Wakefield from the AIPH team to really help to develop this experience for the visitor. Title of the exhibit that we came up with was Oasis of Life, Uncovering the Power of Plants. We had 4 very specific goals that we wanted to achieve in the experience, and making sure that the visitor left this pavilion with these messages in mind. Certainly the power of plants and how plants really can affect and horticulture can have an impact on your lives every day and in the environment. The history of AIPH, give a little bit of a background of what AIPH is, and really sort of dove a little bit deeper into what ornamental horticulture is. Celebrate the Expo movement, why these expos are so important to delivering this message to a worldwide audience. And then the theme of the Doha Expo is Green Desert, Better Environment. So we made sure that we touched on that and really sort of brought that to life with our messages and our journey and our experience for the visitor throughout the pavilion. We decided, so deciding why, what, and how to tell this story is probably just as important as what the messages are. Certainly, plants were a really important factor in deciding what plants and how the plants were telling the story. Working for the Philadelphia Flower Show, working for Disney, we really knew that plants and flowers needed to help tell the story and really sort of bring to life the power of plants. The other part of this is messaging is with signage, and making sure we could tell the story. Plants can't tell all the story, so you have to have those messages and that to back up the plant material for the pavilion. And then also video was something that we worked into this as well. Just to go through a little bit of the signage, messages, and the themes that we created to tell the story of this exhibit and this pavilion. The power of plants was one theme that we had. These are the different topics that we covered with a wide range of signs to talk about the air you breathe, the healthy dose of nature. These are food for life, pollinators. These are really written and designed to tell a story, not only to talk to these messages, but also to give the visitor something to take home and be able to incorporate into their lives. I think this is really important to think about when you're designing an exhibit, especially when you have that many 3 million people going to be walking through this exhibit. You want them to leave the exhibit and leave the pavilion with a goal, with an activation, with something that they get inspired to do at home. And so by providing some of these messages, these signs were all written thinking of the visitor and thinking of the ways that they can bring this home and take this to the next level and really sort of incorporate it into their home gardens or into their small gardens in an urban setting. Ornamental horticulture, we felt, was a very important message as well, too, to tell. I think not a lot of people understand what ornamental horticulture things. People hear horticulture and they think, you know, a lot of them go right towards agriculture. So we wanted to make sure we told that difference. What is ornamental horticulture? It is about creating aesthetics. It is about creating environments. It is about telling stories. What's the impact of ornamental horticulture, but also the differences between ornamental horticulture and agriculture, so that people knew the difference and understood that incorporating plants into their homes, into their gardens, onto their balconies, into their patios is something that they can do to improve and to have that power of plants of impacting the environment and impacting their worlds on a daily basis. What is that journey to market is another story that we wanted to tell. This is something important, but I don't think a lot of folks know the journey that these plants take, and that they're grown all over the world and then also shipped and delivered all over the world. So what's the breeding process? How's the exportation of plants and seedlings and cuttings all over the world? What does that production look like? And what is that journey that the plant takes before it actually reaches their home? So we wanted them to understand what that looked like and know that it was not just a very, you know, plants aren't just grown in your area. Sometimes they are grown in the area, sometimes they're imported to your area and making their way to your home and to your garden. So that journey was something that we wanted to make sure we told. It also touches on what AIPH is, as well as the members of AIPH and how they help to green the world and provide plants to the rest of the world. Certainly Expo history, since 1960, the Expo world has really engulfed and made sure they told the story and the power and the impact that plants have, and the greening possibilities of plants and the interactive nature of plants and gardens. So this is something that we wanted to make sure we covered the history of it, some highlights of this, and some of the forthcoming shows as well that are coming up in addition to the Expo at Doha. And then certainly touching on the AIPH Green City Principles. This is something that is really important in the messaging that AIPH wanted to bring forth, and make sure that people understood that they had a purpose and they have a role in helping to create green cities. There's an economic reason for doing these. There's a health reason for doing adding plants to their environment and to the cities. Social interaction, ecology, water, climate change, and pollution mitigation. These are all really important issues that people are struggling with in every city, and how plants can have an impact and an effect on this, and how people, if they just buy one plant, put it on their windowsill, are actually helping to make a difference. And you don't have to have a huge garden to have an impact on this. And so we wanted to make sure that people understood that, and understood that even a few plants in your garden or a few plants on your balcony are helping to make a difference, and the more plants, the better. We also incorporated a kids track for this to make sure we knew that there were going to be a lot of families coming through the show. So we wanted to make sure that kids were talked to as well at a certain level. This was more from a grade school level, probably in the 5, 6 to 10 range is where we were sort of landing with the communication on this. Certainly took them to the plant journey. The future is green is the Green City Principles in their language, and then the power of plants is something that they can understand and make sure that they are doing. So kids was an important track, and making sure that there was a message to them, and we actually installed them at different heights so that the kids can actually see them and read them. And then plant collections. So plants certainly were a really important way to tell these stories, and how we tied them into it. Plant collections were something that were a little bit of a I guess before we got there, we had an idea. Audrey and I spoke a lot about what plants and what messages we could tell with our collection of plants. We were thinking of plants that we thought might there, but we really didn't know until we arrived on scene, arrived on site, what plants we were actually going to be able to see. So we came up with this list of plant material and collections that we thought could really help tell the story and really sort of bring the messaging from the signs to life with plant material for that. When we arrived at Doha, we were sent to the municipal nursery. This is a huge nursery that the government actually owns and imports and brings plants and grows plants for a lot of the municipality in Doha, a lot of their government entities, as well as many plants were brought in specifically for this expo. So we took a tour and made the selections. You can see there was so much quantity here. The quality was okay, and we knew that we were going to be able to select plants from here, but we weren't able to select everything that we needed. And so we made a tour over to Plaza Hollandi, which is a nursery that we found, really spectacular nursery that has roots in Qatar as well as in the Netherlands. This was started in 1980. It's a beautiful nursery, lots of large scale plant material, as well as large, vast arrays of many different varieties of bougainvilleas and different other plantings that they have, all based on heat tolerant and drought tolerant plants for that really spectacular design. And they were able to help us with a lot of selections of the plants that we were able to put into the design. Our first collection of plants that we focused on was really the entrance to the show. We really wanted to make sure we spoke to the arid nature of the landscape that was being presented by the expo, all throughout, with many different expos around there. So we wanted to make sure we touched this. Most of these plant materials, almost all the plant material that we're having and showcasing here, were put in containers, and to really sort of help not only from aesthetically appeal to the visitor when they walk through the exhibit and sort of liven that space up. It was very wood heavy, so adding these plants certainly gave it a little bit of a softer touch, but also gave you a little bit more of a design feel and a color feel to the show. Our arid desert, we really sort of focused in on plants that really knew were heat tolerant, knew that could survive in this environment, and really sort of spoke to the landscape of Qatar. So that was really the entrance, and really should have told the story right away from when the guests and the visitors first entered into the show or into this pavilion. This exhibit here is more from an aesthetic standpoint, is really taking the design of this exhibit, the structure that we had here, and using plant material to help soften that and help in making it a little bit more aesthetic pleasing, while using plants that we knew were heat tolerant, drought tolerant. The portulaca here, 2 different varieties, as well as the alternanthera, really picked and chosen for their cascading nature, as well as a little bit of color, as well as their drought tolerance. We also had pavilion planters that really served as sort of backdrops, backgrounds, sort of filling space in the area. Vitex was the main large tree that you see here. We also used some smaller bougainvilleas, some tradescantias, and euphorbia that had some color in it that really brought into this color and aspect of, as the folks were walking through this exhibit, it sort of helped guide them into different directions and help push them to different areas that we wanted them to make sure that they saw and read signage, or stopped and watched videos or experienced some of the different collections we had. A photo spot here, you can see me standing there, but this was just really taking advantage of the architecture there and adding plant material for this. Most of this plant material, as you can see, is a little bit smaller in the beginning. This expo runs for 6 months, so we knew we had to pick something a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller, so that it would grow into it and have a nice effect as the exhibit and as the pavilion grew on over the 6 months of this show. The lush tropical area helped us tell a lot of different stories. This is also an area that we felt was a great little respite. It is all fully shaded in this area, the only fully shaded space within this garden. We added seating in this area, or beanbag chairs, just give a little bit of a respite. Also allows them to, we had some signage in this area to allow them to sit, experience this, helped us tell the stories of indoor plants, helped us tell the stories of air purification with plant material, helped us tell a lot of different stories within this area, and really sort of understanding this area. Really some of the important design pieces that we had to think through with this exhibit, you could see that it is an open air pavilion. But with the way the sun works and the way that the pavilion was constructed, there's a lot of microclimates within this space. And I think in the desert or in an arid climate, having microclimates, Audrey and I talked a lot about this, and really how do we expose that? How do we really design to that and make sure that the visitor understood that too, is that you can have these tropical plants that aren't necessarily arid plants, but actually can survive in the heat because they like the heat, as long as you created these microclimates and these micro environments to bring that to life. And so this was one of those examples that we had there for the lush tropical area, and it helped us tell a lot of different stories for the pavilion. And then the night garden. So just to the north side of the pavilion, just on the outskirts of this, there's another walkway that led there with lots of great seating and lots of nighttime lighting. We knew that the visitors would be coming at night most of the time because of the heat during the day pushes most of the people, and most of the activity happens in the evening. And so we wanted to create a space here where people we knew would sit, enjoy the garden, enjoy the space, but also enjoy the planters that we hear. So we created a night garden with Morea, jasmine, some vinca, and rosemary, really focused in on white plant material here, white flowers, but also giving fragrance and scents too, with the rosemary and the jasmine and the Morea all have scented flowers or scented foliage, and then the white color just sort of really popping out at nighttime and really showcasing color and how you can really create a fun and an amazing, engaging garden at the evening hours, even when the sun goes down. And then edible gardens. This was another area that we want to make sure that we were feeding the soul and understanding the folks in this region could actually grow edible pieces, not only from a citrus standpoint or from a fruit standpoint, but also from an herb standpoint. So we added citrus trees here with lots of rosemary, basil, and mint. And then in the inner circle of the pavilion, it was highlighted by a hydroponic area of sweet potato vine that really should have told the story of agriculture or horticulture, how you can incorporate that into your home and actually provide food for yourself, reducing travel, reducing shipping, all those different things that are benefits of having plants and growing your own vegetables and own food gardens in this area. And then these are some of the finished products. I'm getting here, wrapping up a little bit on time. These are just some of the finished shots that we had of the pavilion and how we brought that to life with the different areas and signage that we had for this area. And then thank you to all the folks. Again, this was a huge team effort, not only with Audrey Van is in that picture as well, with Elena and Rachel Wakefield, who never got to see the space, but her signage was great on the AIPH team. And then the group in the middle is our group from Plaza Hulandi, who came and helped us plant. Great group of horticulturalists and gardeners that helped us really bring to life this exhibit and make it look as special as it is. Cannot wait to see it again. I know folks, if you can travel over there, there's a lot of amazing exhibits and a lot of amazing pavilions in the expo, and it will look better every day as the plants grow and develop. So thank you so much for that, and look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Sam, thank you very much for your presentation. Really great introduction to the pavilion that you helped to create there, and the thinking behind it to really bring the right type of plants and to expose people to what they can achieve themselves when they visit. Okay, so thank you very much, and welcome back, Mingyu, as well. We now have a chance for some questions. So I say to the audience, please do put any questions in the Q&A. I will keep an eye on that tab as well, or the chat, and so we can bring your questions in as well. But let's, I'll start with Mingyu, and thank you very much for giving your presentation about your research. Certainly, we've seen over the last 10, 15 years this real interest in the use of meadow in an urban setting. But I suppose it is the case that you would tend to see it in 1 year and then expect that it's just replaced in the next year or something. And you were really tackling that issue of how it has a long-term future. And I suppose using these sort of natural systems, in a way, they're going to behave naturally, aren't they? And you're going to, the fittest will survive and push through, and you end up with something that's neither aesthetically pleasing nor even that biodiverse. Is it? And I guess you will. What you are showing is that it is built in a way that there will be some kind of reversion backwards unless you really address that issue of dominance and species. And you've identified that you have to match the forb species, the non-grass species, with the grass in terms of equivalent dominance. But how is that really impacted, though, by the local climate, the local soil conditions? If you come up with one solution in the area that you have looked at, how relevant is that going to be in other areas?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think because the result I got from my experiment was kind of an intermediate, well, I would say that's dry to intermediate plant community. So it's not very extreme drought or not very extreme wet community. But from my point of view, the issue of dominance, we could draw a gradient. Like if you have a very wet community, you tend to get the dominance from quite early stage, and versus if you get a very dry community, you tend to have a reduced rate of the progress of dominance. And so I think my research just suggested a generic pattern to test this hypothesis, for the competition between forbs and grasses. So, but that's not the only one answer, and then that's not the only one system for the species selection, but it only implies for the principle for coexistence, for competition, and for diversity. But I think for each type of the community, we can't really design and just leave it spontaneously grow. That would always lead to some type of dominance or with invasion. So that's leads to dominant in the end as well. So I think the message I'm just trying to deliver is that it's just a pattern happening later or sooner to kind of having the community going to another direction, but with a different speed rate depends on different conditions. Yeah, I don't know if that's answering the question or
sure. I mean, really, you're saying that the different conditions might affect the rate of reversion or the rate in which dominance will become apparent. So maybe in some conditions it may slow down or be faster. And I guess, like any research, you want to there's opportunity for more research. It always raises more questions, doesn't it, once you do this? But it would be great if you could get to a point where you will create some kind of blueprints, I suppose, which will really support people in terms of using and having the right mix and the right management for their systems. We have a question on the Q&A where they're asking, did your research explore the impact of mowing regimes for succession? And I also had a question linked with that about really what kind of annual maintenance is required in a system like this to try and minimize the whole dominance issue that you've been talking about.
Yes, and so in my trial, mowing regime I employed was just to cut everything down in February, that's just for the maintenance purpose, and I collect the data in late July. So if we are talking for this aspect, the min mowing regime, that's February and July, but I didn't really test the effect for the different timing of mowing. But I do believe that would give me significant different communities. So just talking my case, I just that's very evident that for the species, for one of my dominant species, which was Echinopsis ferrocephalus, that species is not really tolerant to early cut. So if you cut them in June, you don't really have them to come back in the next spring. And given that's one of my most dominant species, so we could predict if you get that removed or not coming back in the next year, that would dramatically change the community structure. And that will definitely give us something different. But that's unfortunately that was not a part of my research. So
but yes, but this is still relatively new, isn't it? This whole area. So I can see that your work will the need for this kind of work really will continue long into the future. So thank you for that and your explanation. I'm going to move over to Sam now, and wondering how, Sam, you have felt that the way plants are used in shows, with your experience of shows and exhibitions, how has it changed? What do you think are the future trends in the use of plants in the show environment? What's the consumer looking for? What are people looking to promote?
Yeah, I think well, I don't think the one thing that hasn't changed, I think people are always looking for color. They're always looking for flowers. I think that's something that is important to the visitor. I think they don't get enough of that, and they want to see that. The stories being told, though, are changing. And how can we use those stories? And Mingyu, you're talking about, great use of meadows, but and making sure that there is color and making sure there is their seasonal color. And so I think that's to the point of that people want to see color, they want to see flowers, but how do we tell that story? And what's the important message of how they can incorporate that into their own homes and into their own gardens? I think making sure that people understand that they can make a difference no matter what the little difference is of bringing plants into their homes, into their gardens. Indoor plants are so important and so popular right now, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a huge garden. It can be a handful of plants sitting on the windowsill that are helping to make a difference. And I think that's what people need to understand. The more plants that people can have in their possession, in their care, the impacts that it has not only on the environment but on themselves from a stress standpoint, on them, on their environment. It's just something that's a really important message then, and I appreciate the AIPH helping to tell that story and allowing me to help tell that story at the AIPH Pavilion at the Expo.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really it's certainly, we've seen a move, haven't we, from just things that look good to how you can you can show people how they can make a difference in the world that they're living through the decisions they make in their lives using plants. And I can see that Frankie has appeared, so this means my time has run out, your time has run out, and I would like to thank you so much for answering these questions. Thank you for your presentations, a really great discussion. And thank you for asking me to be part of it as well. And I better wrap up now, but thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best in your research and in your ongoing activities. And I hand back over now to Frankie. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Tim. And that was an excellent detailed look at the role of species across many different contexts for the engagement of plants and the power of plants in urban areas. Thank you both to Tim and Mingyu and to Sam for joining us today. They were brilliant, fascinating presentations. I would like to thank our sponsors, the Worshipful Company of Gardeners and Expo 2023 Doha Qatar. This, as Tim mentioned, has been the final session of the 22-23 Green City webinar series, and we look forward to bringing more briefings, case studies, experts and insights to our international audience as we look to plan our 2024 briefing series. But between now and then, do join AIPH to discover the power of plants in creating resilient cities through joining the discussion on the AIPH Green City Forum. Follow us on LinkedIn and sign up to receive the global Green City updates straight to your inbox. Thank you to our speakers and for you for participating in today, wherever you are. If it's good morning in America to good evening in Sri Lanka. Have a wonderful day. Thank you and goodbye.
You are a seed, the beginning of a new awareness, a new global movement. You have life in you. Share it, spread it, bring your thoughts and skills. Make it all fruitful. Tomorrow brings challenges and opportunities. Grow. Grow the resources to embrace science and experience for global sustainability. Grow the tools and use technology to cultivate a new and better future together. Grow the knowledge to reconnect to nature and promote a greener development. Grow the balance between local and global, planet and people, today and tomorrow. Growth starts with you. Welcome to Expo 2023, Doha, Qatar. Qatar has the perfect conditions for this growth to take roots. From Doha, we can grow a green desert and a better environment. Our Expo site consists of 3 main areas designed to host, gather, and inspire. Together we can sow the days of tomorrow for everyone to enjoy, everywhere. We are expecting you on the 2nd of October 2023. One Expo site, consisting of 3 character areas, is growing now to welcome you in 2023 to the future of horticulture. You are the seed and the movement that will gather the world in Qatar. Together in Doha, we will grow a green desert for a better environment.